and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alexei, and today I have a special guest, Kile Odell. Kile Odell is a music producer, mixing and recording engineer who has been working with such great metal bands as Motionless in White, Nothing More, Can Heal, Letters from the Fire, and many more. In our today's interview with Mr. Kile Odell, we're going to be talking about his work with new brand Alissa White-Gluz band, which is called Blue Medusa. Also, if you want to learn from Mr. Kile Odell on mixing rock and metal, you can check out his session on mixing Nothing More on Nail the Mix. All links will be in the info box of this video. It's a huge honor to have you on my YouTube channel today, Mr. Odell. And let's start our interview. How did you become a sound engineer?
So it was like totally accidental, honestly. Well, not accidental, but you'll get what I mean. I was in the early 2000s. I was in a metalcore band that had gotten signed, and we were touring a lot, and we had to write our record between touring and just the busyness of being a brand new signed band. And so since we couldn't always get into a room together, I bought some stuff. I bought this really terrible computer, and I bought like Superior Drummer 1 when it first came out, and just started kind of making demos for myself as like purely to write with. And then, in our free time that we did get, we would get into a room and go over those and start writing. But so it kind of started like that. And then eventually, like, some of my friends' bands were like, hey, your demos sound pretty good. Can you do a couple songs for us? And so we come out and I would demo out songs for them. And then it just kind of snowballed until eventually I after years and years of doing it and like kind of getting sucked into it and obsessed with it, I started working with one of my best friends, Drew Folk, and we did some sessions with Motionless in White, and then that kind of like, it was like, all right, this is what you're doing now.
How did you start working with Blue Medusa?
Okay, so it's been 3 or 4 years that I've been working with Alissa. I think that we started in 2021, if I am not mistaken. Obviously, she was still an arch enemy at the time, and but she was doing like solo stuff. So she would come in randomly when not touring, and we would work on some of the solo material. And then, as things progressed and her life changed and all that, she hit me up. She was like, I'm going to do this band. And she was like, I have 2 really great guitarists. I want to come in and bring you what they've written, and then let's just kind of see what happens. And that was what developed into this new project.
How do you produce drums for Blue Medusa?
That's like it's like a complicated thing, initially when we first started, she didn't have the full outfit yet. She was like, it was kind of like this like exploration, if you will. Like, she was like, I'm trying to, she wanted to figure out what she felt like was her and all of that. And then, like I said, she had Alissa and Danny playing guitar for her, who are incredible guitarists. I mean, I can't speak highly enough of them. So we just had like program drums to start with, building the songs and stuff like that. And then she found Delaney, who is playing with her now. So I think moving forward and with the with the record and everything, we plan on having the drummer be involved with it. But the initial thing, it was just the three of us kind of figuring it out.
And in this case, I would like to ask you a question on virtual drums. Like, what tips can you give on making virtual drums sound strong in the mix? And also, should you mix virtual drums in any metal mix, like in general sense, because they already like pre-mixed in their virtual libraries?
Yeah, drums are such an interesting thing because, like, when I started producing, like I said, I bought the first iteration of Superior Drummer, and it was like everyone was like, no, we're not doing that. No. And it was like, okay, I get it. But then, like, you had like Meshuggah, who was doing programmed drums and like all these examples of these phenomenal bands that were utilizing this to some degree, even if it didn't make the final record, but I'm a big, it's tough because so many of them sound great now. I have so many. I tend to live in the Get Good Drums world. I really love what Nolly does. I think he's an absolute genius when it comes to drum sounds. But I also like the mixed wave stuff that Taylor Larson does. I like Buster's stuff. Buster, I think his stuff sounds insane. There's a fourth one. I like Yen's stuff a lot too. And Yen's is what I used for the Blue Medusa. I believe I was using the Eloy Casagrande stuff, but I think whenever you're using that, it can be a little tricky because, like, you have to nail the spirit of a drummer. Like you can't just put stuff in. Like, it's just not that simple. And I think from years of recording drummers and recording a lot of great drummers, like Ben from Nothing More, I've recorded him and like seeing because I'm a guitarist. I've played guitar for 27 years, but seeing them on a grid, you can kind of see how a drummer's brain works. And so I think from years of that, editing, comping, mixing live drums, I've kind of gained this ability to see through the lens of a drummer. But I think you have to nail that. Like, one big thing that I talk about all the time that I didn't realize when I started and I was just in guitar player mode was sometimes when fills would start, drummers would hit a kick and a cymbal and then start the fill. Whereas I would just start the fills on the downbeat. And obviously sometimes they do start on the downbeat, but that's like little things like that are very important to pay attention to, like if you're hitting two toms together or a tom and a snare together, they're not going to hit at the exact same time. You have to flam them. Like, all those little things are the things I think add up. And then, when it comes to like mixing them, I kind of treat them the same way I do live drums. I try to make them sound as, superhero as possible.
How do you produce bass for Blue Medusa?
Okay, so her bass player tracked bass and sent us, like, I think it was four tones. I tried to utilize all of them, but I also utilized my own sound a bit in there too, because she provided a DI. Bass was played really well, so it was awesome. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff is remote. I didn't have the band in the room with me. I had Alissa in the room with me, but like the bass player and the two guitarists would send me DIs, and then I would look at them, and if I needed anything extra, I would tell Alissa, ask them to send me this. But for the bass, it was I'm not sure what bass she used. It sounded amazing. But I think it ended up being like something crazy, like 5 tracks. It was like the DI. I think I used Parallax from Neural DSP, and then she had like a Sansamp track and an amp track and another track, and I just kind of blended them all together. I'm I'm not a split the frequencies kind of guy when it comes to producing or mixing bass. Like I know a lot of guys like to have the distorted track high passed up and the low end track low passed down. I don't tend to do that. I just kind of work them all together and check phase and just, EQ and compress until it sounds like something really percussive and attacky, but also has like the sustain and all that we need.
And in this case, I would like to ask you a question on bass tone. So in this case, how do you create the bass tone for Blue Medusa?
Yeah, so like I said, she supplied a DI. We had 2 mic tracks that were on an amp, and then we had a Sans amp track that she supplied. And what I did to the DI is I had I duplicated it, and then on the main DI tone I put parallax on. There's a preset. I'm trying to remember. I can't even remember who it's from. John something. But there's a preset in there that I use. It's like super blown out, distorted, but big. I did that. And then on the duplicate, because since we were using DIs and we didn't reamp, I was using one of the Bogren amp knob amp models for their guitar tone. I put that on the DI because sometimes what I like to do is even if I'm reamping, I will send the DI through whatever guitar tone I used for the recording, because there's something that I feel like if I run the bass through that, it will glue the guitar and the bass. So I'll use that tone to kind of marry them together. And then between the parallax tone, the Sans amp tone, and the 2 amp tones, I just kind of played with blending them, EQing them. Like some of them, like I believe I used the Sans amp for more of like that 800 mid-range area. So yeah, it was just that, it's kind of a puzzle. And then usually I will, throughout the song, I'll be chopping and muting certain tones as the song goes by. Like if the clean section in Checkmate before the second chorus, I went to just a clean bass tone. So I'll chop and mute, like that really distorted one that I use for the majority. I'll have it pop in just on really heavy sections. And then like in the verse, for instance, it'll go to just the amps that she sent or something like that. It's a puzzle. But it sounded great, so I was happy.
What tips can you give on control on the low end in Blue Medusa mixes?
Yeah, that's always a feat. It's so fast and there's so much double kick, and it's funny because I come from the metal world. My favorite bands were a lot of these European bands. Like, in my top 5 favorite bands is the band Soilwork. I mean, I've listened to them from the beginning. Predator's Portrait is my favorite record of theirs. So I have this like understanding of that world, even though I mix very like American, almost like rock. So what I was trying to do was trying to figure out how to make, when the songs were like more open and there wasn't a ton of double kick and like crazy fast stuff happening, how to inject that rock thing that I do, which is kind of like derived from my Randy Staub influence, or guys like Zach Cervini and stuff like that. I was trying to do that, but then when it would get really fast and really intricate, I was trying to remember like, okay, Soilwork, In Flames, The Haunted, trying to get my brain into that mode. So it was a lot of automating the kick drum. Like whenever we get busy, like pulling that down. I had a multi-band compressor on the kick drum that I was automating on and off, so that like when the 4 on the floor parts would happen, the low end would be full on, and then when the double kick would happen, it'd cut on and pull some of that down. it's just a lot of management. It's a lot of managing, where things sit at what point. And I'll be honest, and I just don't think about it a ton. It's just kind of like, as I'm listening, I'll be like, oh, this is getting a little crazy. I have to reel this in, and then I'll add something like the multiband. I also have my bass and my rhythm guitars side chained to the kick drum so that there's some like room being made, because I love drums. I'm a guitarist, but I love drums. I feel like nothing gives better energy than a big, wild sounding drum set. So I'm always trying to preserve the drums as much as possible.
How do you produce guitars for Blue Medusa?
Yeah, so that was quite possibly the trickiest part, because like I said, you have two like really great guitarists whose writing styles are totally different. So it was like marrying those two, making sure that each player is kind of like, has their moment to shine and like their personality to come through. I would say like Alissa is very like, she's like very modern, kind of in, very techie, but also like very much kind of in like, the wage war architects kind of land. And then Danny is more like, she does these like wild chord voicings. Sometimes it's very like Opeth or black metal, even though we don't necessarily paint it in that direction. That's what it gives me when I hear it. So it was tricky because, like I said, they were tracking themselves. So like my ability to QC it, if they were sitting beside of me tracking, I could be like, no, we have to do that again, and just keep working it. Since that wasn't there, it was a lot of, I think I remember I like drafted up a PDF that I was like, okay, Alissa, send this to them. This kind of has everything that I need. Like if you're doing rhythm guitars, I need a left and right of everything. If there's a vocal going on and there's a lead guitar, I need a left and right of it. If there's no vocal going on, it can be center. It's like all those little details. But they played it great. It was easy. And I made some tweaks and in a couple of spots, it's me, I didn't play any of the riffs. I didn't play any of the choruses or solos or anything like that. But there were times where I was like, oh, I wish the guitars had like a fade. So I would grab my guitar and hit the chord and fade it in or little things like that. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, when you have players that good, it makes life super easy, very easy. And, it sounded great. I wish that I had had a little time to reamp it, because I have like 13 heads over here that I like to use, but we were in a time crunch. But the Bogren stuff sounds incredible. So
what tips can you give on mixing guitars for Blue Medusa?
It's so funny. I was, in all my years, like playing live and touring and all that, I was always this massive, like, rectifier fan. I loved the low end. I was a big Killswitch Engage fan. I loved their guitar tones, like End of Heartache and As Daylight Dies and Alive or Just Breathing. I just love those kinds of guitar tones, which, other than as Daylight Dies, Andy Sneap. Andy Sneap did End of Heartache. He did Alive or Just Breathing, and Andy Sneap and Colin Richardson were kind of like the influence for me with guitar tones. Nevermore. I could go down the list of all the amazing bands that he's worked with that I bought records and listened to just because he would produce it. But with this, what I found was a lot less low end. A lot less low end in the guitars. I mean, the guitars are basically, they're just, I have them sitting just in the mid range. I have some like top end stuff. Like I did some mid side stuff where I boosted like 10K and just put it on the sides. But yeah, just a lot of mid range and less gain than I think people expect. Like I think if you heard them isolated, it would be like, oh, that's not nearly as distorted as it sounds in the mix. But it's like once it all, it's little bitty moves to equal the sum. But I think that's the big thing is way less low end. Managing the. I love low mids a lot in guitars, but they can get really crazy when things get fast. So that's where like the side chaining stuff comes in helpful with the kick drum. Yeah, it's it's tricky. It's tricky. Like if it's slow, mid tempo, not crazy riffs, not crazy double kick, you can kind of get away with a lot more stuff, a lot more full frequency even. But when it's that fast and that's that techie, my number one thing is way less low end. Like, when you turn it down and you think it's too little, go a little more. It's surprising how little low end there is.
How do you produce Alissa's vocals for Blue Medusa?
I mean, gosh, she's so good. It kind of just does it itself. She likes to track herself. I'd love to track her one day, but I know she has her system and it works really well. So usually it's like me and her in the room figuring out the structure. We'll talk about melodies, like when she's singing, or we'll talk about cadences and like kind of a plan of attack. And then she'll go home and track herself and then send me the vocals. Or like sometimes we have 3 or 4 rooms at the studio. She'll go into one of the other rooms and track vocals while I'm sitting here editing, cleaning up the instrumental or adding production, whatever. But she tracks herself. It's like super easy. I don't have to do a ton to her. I mean, I think, my general way is like I pull in the vocals, we'll listen to it, and I'll just be like, hey, what if we added this thing right here, like additionally, or like there's a couple gaps that they feel like dead spots. Let's add, throws or maybe it's not a throw. Maybe you track it and I treat it like a throw. But it's easy. She has a great ear for all of that stuff. So it's kind of nice that I can just trust her and be like, yep, do your thing. And then we'll just nitpick it to death, but we get it to the finish line,
How do you mix Alissa's extreme vocals in Blue Medusa mixes? And in this case, can you please tell me about your plug-in chain you are using for her extreme vocals, and if this plug-in chain is different from her clean vocals in the mixes?
Yeah, so definitely different between the two. I think if I'm correct, I'm trying to remember. For her like heavier vocals, I'm using pretty much my go-to always first in the chain is the old original Waves SSL channel strip. I will do like a little bit of compression. That's where I'll do my EQ and whatnot. And then after that, I'll add Pro Q. And I'll do like the notching stuff. Like I find sometimes with screamers, you get this build up in the 400 to 800, depends on what range they're in. But in that area, you'll get a build up that kind of makes it sound almost woolly or woofy. I don't know. But I'll go and carve that stuff out. And then, distressor. I like for screams, I love a distressor on the nuke setting. And then, slow attack, fast release. And then I just slam it really hard, 15 to 20 dB of gain reduction. I mean, I want when it's screaming, I want it like right here. And so I'll do that. And then, to finish it off, probably like Waves L1 just to catch the last little bit. And then, Decapitator. Not doing any actual distortion though. I like using Decapitator kind of like, how like Slate VCC is, it has all the console emulations on it. I kind of like using Decapitator like that, where like I'll put it on and I'll flip through the different types and find the one that sounds really good on the vocal. And I'll just push the drive until it sounds good, not until it's actually distorting. And then, for effects, I kind of like the lead to be completely dry. I'll put a doubler. I'll send it to a doubler, usually like little micro shift. And then I'll blend that in just to give it some width. But then all the doubles that we did, they will have the same processing chain, but they will also go to a delay, which is usually the Pro Tools stock delay, the mod delay. And then they'll go to a reverb, which is, I'm trying to think what I used at the time. I bounce a lot. I mean, I've found a new one that I really love, which is, Lasse Lammert's Space Reactor reverb. I love that reverb so much. But I think for hers, because that was before that came out, honestly, I think I was just using the Pro Tools reverb. But they're just on the doubles, and it's not a lot of it. I tend to lean more towards more delay than reverb, but on screams, I'm just trying to get it as aggressive and in your face as possible. And any delays that you hear trailing, most of the time that's like me copying it to a throw track, and you're hearing that do it. I think if I were to isolate it, you would hear that the delay, the ambience on the screams is very minimal, and it's mostly like production effects that I'm adding that are doing it.
How do you prepare your mixes for mastering?
Yes, I don't even know if I do. I mastered these two tracks, so it was a bit of an exception. I do like sending my stuff off for mastering. I prefer it. I feel like I'm a really big fan of Mike Kalajian. I feel like every time he masters something I do, I get a bit of a wow, factor, because he's just so good at what he does. But I mastered these two, but if I'm not mastering, I mix probably 70% of the way through the mix without any limiting at all, without any, just my mix bus, no mastering chain. And I'll turn it on right before I do vocals, right before I mix the vocals. And I do that because there's nothing that drives me crazier than turning my limiter off and the whole mix falls apart. So I'm very cautious of that, so that when I send it off to mastering, I can just turn that limiter off, bounce it out, send it off, and it's good to go. Other than that, I don't think that I do a ton of prep for it. I guess my prep is what I just said. I do like 70% of the mix without it on and without a limiter on, just as like an insurance policy, because back before I knew that, and they would want to send something off to mastering, I would turn it off, and then all of a sudden the snare sounds terrible. This isn't loud enough, and it would just be a mess. So, I think my prep just consists of me mixing without any kind of limiter at first.
And my final question is, what is your mastering chain?
Okay. This will be probably really underwhelming. I first in the chain. Hold on, I got to remember. I bounce so much, but I believe the first thing that it hits is like, I do remember. It's I use VCC, the Slate VCC. I use the Neve console, and I turn the drive all the way up. I really like what it does to the low end because it doesn't distort. I'm very conservative on how hot I'm hitting my mix bus. But it makes the low end really big. And then after that, it is API 2500. I have a really fast release, and then I think the attack is the 0.3 setting. So it's not the usual really slow attack, really fast release. It's a thing that I saw Nolly do once, and I was like, I love this. I want to find my own way of doing this because I like it a lot. So I use the 2500, 0.3 attack, fastest release, ratios 4-1. And then I'm hitting 3 dB of gain reduction on that. And then after that, I have, and this is directly from Nolly. I use the FG Red Slate plugin. And I have it on, I can't remember the settings. I literally got them from him and I just never changed them. But if you go online, you can find them. I have it doing 7 dB of gain reduction, but the mix on the compressor is at like 15%. It's like just a little. And then after that, I have a precision multiband universal audio precision multiband on this preset called Two Bus Squish. And that's a preset that me and Drew Falk did for so many years, and it just always stuck. So it's just never left. And then after that, I think Pro L, I might put an EQ after it and do some little things at the end to kind of fix anything. But, yeah, I mean, that's it. It's nothing too out there, I like to get it all done in the mix. I want to make sure the mix is there.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for such a knowledgeable interview. And, of course, thank you so much for your Nails the Mix session, because I rewatched it last week and learned so much new stuff for myself about mixing drums from your Nails the Mix session and guitars and so on and so forth, especially how to use drum samples in a proper way and so on and so forth. And thank you so much for all of your wonderful and very phenomenal audio work you are doing for audio community. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.